Hey everybody, welcome back to Tavern Talks. Tonight, as you can see, I'm not alone. I have all sorts of fun tonight. Anyway, we have for episode 135 Pushing Dragons, a local crew here in Virginia that have come up with a way to make Dungeons and Dragons and improv comedy blend. Who would think that was going to work, right? I did, and that's why I went and checked it out the first time, and now I'm stuck. It's your fault. Remember that. Anyway, I've got here Sean, Kat, and Nate from Pushing Dragons, and we're going to talk everything about how their show works, how they are doing things and blending the two together, how they're creating characters, and then, of course, we're going to go over something that nobody thought was going to work or happen, which was the Dragon Fair, a impromptu Renaissance fair that we decided would be a great idea to put together. But it was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. So before I go any farther, we're just going to let kind of go around the circle real quick. Let everybody tell who they are, how they're in the TTRPG space, and what they're doing at Pushing Dragons. Sean, kick it off.
Okay, my name is Sean Devereaux. I am the co-owner of the Push Comedy Theater in Norfolk, Virginia, and I am the creator and for Pushing. It is our Dungeons and Dragons live play that has been going on a little over 2 years, I think. Math has always been fuzzy for me, but I believe it's July, I guess, was our 2nd anniversary. So a little over 2 years. As far as my relationship with the game, I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid. I'm a bit older than most of the people in my game. So I was playing the Mold Day Basic set back in the 80s, and then into the early 90s, where I fell out of it for a while. Would play a sporadic game here and there. And then during the pandemic, I really kind of dove back in, and out of that is how we got Pushing Dragons.
Awesome. All right. Kind of, if we look at this screen, it's going to be below me. So, Kat, you're on.
Hi, I'm Kat O'Malley. I'm a student at the Push Comedy Theater. I've been taking classes there since 2019. I have been a really big fan of Pushing Dragons since the first episode. I attended the first episode, and then I started coming in and taking out the trash and sweeping the floors before the show. And then Sean gave me a role in the show, a non-speaking role. But then after a year of kind of showing up and being in the shows, I was able to get bigger roles. And as far as D&D goes, I really got into playing D&D kind of during the pandemic. I have always really wanted to do it, but being forced to work from home really gave me the time and opportunity to be able to play D&D. And it's like my whole life now. I'm in like 3 campaigns right now.
That sounds like most of us, truthfully.
Yeah.
Anyways, and Nate.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nate Baki. I how I got into Pushing Dragons was it was around the time where I started learning how to run lights and sound at the theater. So I was kind of just absorbing every single show, and that include Pushing Dragons. And my first job ever with Pushing Dragons was the ladder person.
Yeah, ladder
And
boy.
to, for everybody at home, the ladder person's job is to make sure Sean gets on top of our concession stands and down and up and down. And it's a very important job, and I don't take it for granted. And then I ended up running tech for one of the shows, running lights and sound later on. And then there was a workshop where I was introduced to tabletop for the first time. And I fell in love with, D&D tabletop and just the D&D world through that. So, and then Sean eventually put me into one of the shows. So it's been a fun ride with D&D.
Awesome. Well, one thing I love to do is I love to ask three questions. Now, Sean's heard these three questions before. However, it's going to be interesting to see the differences because Sean, like he said, is a lot older than a lot of the people that he has played with. So we're going to go the opposite direction for this one. So Nate, did you play before you started Pushing Dragons?
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no, no. I thought if I can be honest, I thought D&D was incredibly nerdy before this, and and this is coming from a kid who spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Pokemon cards. Um, but I grew out of that. But yeah, I had no experience with D&D before Pushing Dragons.
As a professional trading card gamer in high school, I can completely understand that. I funded each gaming set or each card game with the last game that I would go to tournaments with, and that was kind of how I did most of my high school career. Anyway, yeah, I'm a nerd. It's all right. That's why we do this. Um, so, what then caught your eye for Dungeons and Dragons? What was the thing that you went, "Oh, this is actually pretty neat," and not just a nerdy game that people play in their basement?
Well, I learned through improv, and one of the cool things about improv, and it's one reason that I take it, is the different characters. Um, I've made probably like 15 characters that I'll never use, but I just love the process of like kind of coming up with the backstory, kind of figuring out who is this person, what race, what class, playing around with different stuff, what works, what doesn't work. So I would definitely say the character aspect of it has really caught my eye and something that I fell in love with.
Awesome. Sort of same question for you, Kat, is when did you start getting into tabletop gaming, and what was kind of the spark moment for you? Like, oh, this is pretty neat, or this is what I really enjoy about the game.
I started getting into tabletop gaming right around the pandemic. Me and my friends started playing Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, and that was
Ooh.
kind of, yeah, that was really my taste tester. And they're like, "Oh, this is like D&D light." And then after I played that, I was like, "I can play D&D." And I really like I have anxiety, so I'm very rules oriented, and this is a game where you can kind of really let go. And I also really like flirting with my friends. I think it's hilarious to do. It's really fun. And yeah, and it just really helps you get to know people better. And one of the fun things that I had with the characters is we did a personality test, like the Enneagram test, but in character. And it's really helping me in improv as well because, we could write letters to our family in character. And it's just really getting to know a character that is not yourself has really gone wonders for me.
Neat. And then for the old man of the group.
Yeah, what was the question again? I'm old.
What got you into, like, when did you get into Dungeons and Dragons? What got you into it? Like, what
Okay,
actually caught your eye on it?
so it's interesting. So I've been an extremely nerdy kid. I am really big into comic books. I have a collection of over 40,000 comic books. Um, I'm into fantasy, science fiction. I've never been diagnosed, but I have really bad ADD and probably OCD. Um, to give you an example, today I my main job, I work at Channel 13. I am a producer there. I write and produce and edit and direct commercials. So I was editing today and some really boring stuff. So I decided I was going to put a movie on in the background, and the movie I decided was Flash Gordon, the one of the Flash Gordon serials from the 1930s, but it was the third one. And I'm like, well, I don't want to start with the third one. I want to go with the first one. But then I had to do research. I spent 2 hours of my work today. I hope my boss never sees this. Researching the Flash Gordon serials. So like when I latch onto something, I really, really latch onto it. And I guess I had read The Hobbit. And I was really into that. So my mom had heard about Dungeons and Dragons, so she had bought me the basic set for Christmas one year, and started playing with my friends. And another friend who had the advanced Dungeons and Dragons books, So we started merging the rules that we liked from the basic set with the rules we liked from the advanced set. And then from there, we just went down the nerdy role playing hole. We went to like Gangbusters, which was like a 1930s role playing game, Boot Hill, which was a Western game, Top Secret, Star Frontiers, Champions, which was a superhero game. Pretty much any role playing game that came out in the 1980s, we played, and I still have socked away somewhere in my nerd closet. So, yeah, I really like telling stories. I'm a writer at heart, but I'm also lazy. So I think role playing is a really cool way to tell stories, but the onus isn't always on me to tell the story. It's collaborative. Everybody is kind of throwing in their little bits to tell the story together.
Yeah, and what a unique way to do it with Pushing Dragons too, because not only do you not have any control over the characters, but you have no control over the NPCs or the monsters either at this point.
No, not at all. Not at all. So the real time breaking down the way the show works is normally we have three actors who are our PCs. I will roll up with them their characters, and they will kind of go over their backstories, how they met, kind of like you would do a session zero. Mm-hmm. So I normally get the three actors who will be the PCs, and then I just have this collection of actors that I go to who will act as my monsters and my NPCs. So what I will do is I will come up with a basic scenario, like the adventure we did at Dragon Fair this past weekend. It was a very simple quest. The PCs are hired to escort this princess into the Feywild, and along the way they are going to encounter a monster that has been hired to kill her. And that's pretty much the extent of the adventure. I kind of break it down into scenes. So like my NPCs know when they need to come in, and kind of what the end goal is. Like I said, this one was very basic: kill or capture the princess. Sometimes when we're doing our campaign, which sometimes will go like 13 or 14 episodes long, and the longer it goes, the more detailed it gets. So by that point in time, I'm handing the monsters and NPCs like a pretty thick stack of what their objectives are and things like that. But again, once the game starts, I'm on top of our concession stand, so I'm as far from the players as you could possibly be, and I just got to put a lot of faith in them. And sometimes it goes off the rail, and I will kind of jump in as the narrator to steer it back on track. And again, it's just a lot of fun. It's again a lot of improv. We do a lot of audience participation. We try to get audience involved in the story. Again, it's just been an absolute blast.
Yeah, no, I watched. I think I've been now going almost, I'd say almost a year. Maybe I've been going at this point. And you're right. It's one of those things where watching certain shows and seeing where things start to go on track and when things kind of pull away, where it still tells a great story because everybody is invested. No matter if you're the NPC, no matter if you're the monster, no matter if you're the player, everybody is invested in this production, and that has been really neat to see kind of grow over the time. And what awesome opportunities to bring nostalgia back for those that have been watching it for so many years, or for the last 2 years. When you brought back Jerry or some of these characters that are from the original season into the second season, it was definitely that those people that had been in the audience for a while understood that, caught onto it really quickly. So yeah,
that has been our. Oh, go ahead.
No, I would say when I tell everybody though, when he mentions that he's on the top, it's the most safety thing I've ever seen happen. They just pull a
Hmm.
ladder out, they strap him to it, and they tie him up and they pull him up. That's it. There's no danger to this at all. So that he's able to get safely up and down the ladder at least 4 times a night. So
I got to
Yeah, and
DM a
I
Pushing
never.
Dragon show, and I will never go back up on that wiener hole again. Not, if I ever have to DM again, I'm doing it from the tech booth for sure.
That's right. So over the 2.5 years there, I've had a couple guests come in. One of the shows that we do at the Push Comedy Theater every year, it's called Panties and a Twist. It's the largest all-female comedy in the country. And Brad, my partner, and I, we produce it, and it normally goes up at the Norva in February. But to kind of promote Panties and a Twist this past year, I got Kat and another one of our players, Sydney, to take over for one night the dungeon master role. So they had actually an all-female cast of Pushing Dragons. And again, like I said, to me, it's become second nature. Like, like even this past weekend at Dragon Fair, I didn't write the show or even like really think about the show to a couple hours before we went on stage with it. Normally, I try to do a little bit better than that. But how was it being the DM for a show like this, Kat? I'm always interested to get the other person's opinion.
Well, I've never DM'd before, so my first time ever DMing was Pushing Dragons. And my best friend that I did it alongside with Sydney is not even as well versed in the rules as me. And the cast that we had, the all-female cast, were also the cast of Panties and a Twist. So they are not necessarily D&D players either. So not only did we have to DM it, but we had to DM it at a level where people who have never played tabletop RPG games knew how to play it, and it was a wonderful blast, especially in the throes of rehearsal. The one thing that I is kind of common, but I hate is when you're doing a really big sketch comedy play, you're in rehearsals 5 days a week, and then it's like, oh, and then we have to plan a Pushing Dragon show on top of that and DM it and make the costumes and the props. Like we are a low budget community theater, so this is all on the backs of volunteers. And it was a wonderful time that I also don't want to do again during panties. Even though Sean keeps asking Sydney if we'll do it again. I'll do it again.
Well, what's great about our show is again we're doing it in front of an audience of about 100 people, and again I was very anxious the first few shows about making sure I know all the rules front and back, because I've always been more of the rule of cool type of uh, dungeon master. Like I will let things slide as long as everybody's having fun and it's keeping the story moving along. I hate stopping down to look up rules. But the audience, if I get a rule wrong or if I'm not sure, I can just shout out, hey, how does this spell work? And guaranteed there's at least 10 people in the audience who know the exact spell, the exact rules, who can shout it back up to me. So I don't even bring my books up into the on top of the wiener hole anymore. I just rely on the audience to keep me on the straight and narrow.
So funny thing you say that, right? That's how Brad and I met. So first episode we're there and he's going by and he's saying something and I just whispered out of like the corner of my mouth. And then for like the next 3 or 4 episodes, anytime he would pass me, he would make sure that he was asking about a rule and he would like look to me at the same time. I'm like, sure, like I kind of know most of the rules, but I don't know like everything off the top of my head. So that is kind of how him and I became closer, surprisingly, was by rule basing, because he'd go, what's the saving throw for this one? I'm like, uh D&D
Well,
Beyond's on
that's
my
the thing.
phone, so that does help me.
That's the thing with Brad is that he has never read the player's handbook, or he has never read a D&D rule book.
I don't think he's read a book.
No, he's an avid reader. He has definitely read
Okay.
books, But
Rules,
the
on the other
rules
hand.
just do not, he just wants, he'll say, this is what I want to do. And then I have to, all right, this is how it works under the D&D rule set. That being said, the one thing he does read avidly, because I normally go to him to be kind of my big bad monsters and stuff, is I have a series of books called The Monsters Know What They Are Doing. And it is kind of it's a D&D kind of supplement where this guy has gone in and kind of given you like the backstory of every monster in the monster manual and tactics on how they think and how they work with other monsters. And
I have that around here somewhere.
It
yeah,
sounds like the Fantastic Beasts of the D&D world.
it kind of is, but he will read that backwards and forwards. And he will really, it kind of like breaks down like the philosophy, like the Manticore. The Manticore loves making one-sided deals, which he really latched onto that. He's played the Manticore a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that he always goes back to. He played a red cap this past weekend, and the red cap is just bloodthirsty. And normally, because we're an improv theater, we don't want everything to be all combat. We do like to have some role playing in between the monsters and the players and stuff like that. But he let the role playing on the shortest he's ever let that go on before, because he knows that the red cap is bloodthirsty and will, once he's set his mind on something, nothing is ever going to change that. So he's like, I'm going to let you speak for about 30 seconds and then I'm attacking no matter what. So he won't read a rule book, but he will read some monster lore.
Yeah, and I think for him, the monster. Not only does he read the monsters know what they're doing, but he'll actually get out the monster character sheet and he'll look at the other points of it. Like he won't look at the character sheet at all, for the monster, the stat block, but everything else before that, he's reading through that. One of the funny things was he goes. He came up to me maybe third episode of season 2 and he was like, just wait until you find out what I am. And I was like, I already know what you are. He's like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way you know what I am. I was like, do you want me to tell you what you are or no? And he was like, he told me to whisper it. He says, if you get it right, I'll let you. He's like, it's ridiculous. He goes, not anybody's guessed it yet. And I was like, I told him about exactly what he was. And he was like, how do you know that? I was like, first off, it's very easy to figure out if you know lore. But for those that didn't, he played a green dragon, which was the leader of the Emerald Worm. And I was like, hold on, this doesn't make it any easier. Like,
True.
Well, that was me. I set out the clues for that. Yeah, he was a green dragon in human form who is running a mercenary company called the Emerald Worm. His name is Lord Viridian. So, like, I signposted it to high heaven.
Yeah. Apparently, there were a lot of people that couldn't figure it out, though.
He's a physical actor, so all his movements, if you go back and look at any of the footage, his arms are always moving like this, like they are wings. And the more he got into it, the more kind of breathy he would also get because of the breath weapon. So like, he does take all that stuff into account. Now, if you ask him what's the difference between an action, bonus action, and reaction, he will have absolutely no idea whatsoever. But
what's that? So this is an interesting question then. Being the fact that we've got somebody who's been DMing for a long time, somebody who's DM'd once or twice, it sounds like, and then Nate who's never, playing a character in a game that you didn't understand, you've never game mastered in, you've never played with the rule set, how did that feel coming into it as an actual character? Because season 2, you weren't just a character, you were a player.
Yeah, it was like very nerve-wracking. I had my debut as this character in October of earlier that year, and I remember like getting off stage and I was like, well, I hate it. Like I hated it, and I hated I hated Sven. I hated that character, and I was like, "Geez, Louise!" Like, if I ever get asked to do this again, I'm not coming back as Sven. And and then a couple months later, Sean asked me like, "Hey, be in the show again," and I. I remember putting in the chat like, "Do you want us to come back as our old characters, or can we make new ones?" And he was like, "No, come back as the old character that you already played." And I was like, damn it! Like, I didn't want to play this character again. I really didn't like it. But it's like and I think that this is kind of a thing with all D&D players that I kind of realized on the most extreme level was like you grow more attached to your character the more that you learn about it, the
Mm.
more that you play it. And I kind of had like a rough idea of like his backstory, but I was like, all right, how much more can we go into like this guy's current situation? And it just so happened that every single episode somebody would die, so I would always have the emotional I would always carry the emotional baggage to the next episode, which was like it was easy because it was like, oh well, I've had like five people die, including my horse. It's like like what else is there? But I think there's a cool arc there for people who are seeing it like yourself.
Have
But it was
you
weird at first.
have you ever died in Dungeons and Dragons yet?
Have I died?
Yes.
Like so
The
yes, I
last one?
have. Yes, I have died. I was playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons, which again, I barely know the rules of fifth edition, so I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Doing a first edition, but in the rules, everybody rolls for initiative, and then um, and everybody kind of initiates what they want to do. And we won initiative, and this I forgot what it was.
It was an Ankh.
Uh, yeah, it was attacking me, and I was like, well, what can I do? And I think Sean was just like, I mean, you can try to parry or something. And I was just like, all right, I'll do that.
Mhm.
I didn't even get a chance. The thing bit me in half, and I was dead. I didn't even get a turn.
That's great.
The thing rolled an eight. It just bit me, and then I was dead. And I was like, well, time to roll up a new character sheet.
Yeah,
Uh,
so about
Oh,
5 or 6 months
OSC?
ago,
Yeah,
we
OSC is
started
nice.
playing old school Essentials, and I've been grabbing people to come in and sit in a game and stuff like that. And I like it because I have a large table. I usually have 8 or 9 players, and it's old school Essentials. Combat goes so quick. There are no death saving throw. I mean, there are no death throws or anything like that. If you get knocked down to 0, you are
Wow.
dead.
You're dead. Yep.
So yeah, like literally their first encounter, an Ankh egg bursts out of the ground, and Nate's dwarf only had like 3 hit points, and this thing did I think 12 points of damage, just bit him in half. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
but
didn't even have a chance. I didn't even have a chance.
no, you
I
did.
couldn't even. I couldn't even have a turn or anything. And I think you won initiative,
Yep.
which it was just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah, so Sean would know this. So back in first and second edition and AD&D specifically, tournament games were not games to win. It was how far you could get in the dungeon before you died. And you
Wow.
got points for how many different rooms you cleared and things like that. And that was how you won that's how you won the tournaments, because they were called meat grinders for a reason. They would just throw players at them. How far can you get through it? One of the biggest ones and one of the most popular ones is the Temple of Elemental Evil, which most people could never get past like room 5 without dying at least once. So yeah, these him introducing you to OSE is funny because that's kind of that level of intensity that for
Yeah,
those
we're
who have
playing. We're
never
playing
played.
OSC, and we're playing.
Oh, Into the Borderlands. I've
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing, and I say this because I talk a lot, but I've never actually played second edition or before. I've only heard about it. So my goal this year is to actually get into a couple games that are from that edition when I get to GaryCon this year. Stefan Picorni is supposed to run us through one first edition game, and then Luke is actually supposed to run me through a game at GaryCon. So we'll see if that still comes through. So for second edition, but yeah, those are those are a lot more aggressive games than people who have been playing fifth edition
If I
are
can say
used
something,
to.
it was a little bit of like a culture shock because I did play like fifth edition, not just on the push stage, but like I had a tabletop group that I played fifth edition with, and you could really mess around, and you can kind of, you know, you could mess around and find out a little bit more easier. But like with
Mm,
this one, it's like you mess around and like you're dead.
yeah.
Like, like you can't even mess around. Like, it's one of those funny things.
So
I
so
I love
go
it.
for it.
Again, I love it. Because I have a huge table that I am playing with and trying to manage, but it definitely makes people think differently. One of our players, Brant, who is an actor and occasionally dungeon master for Pushing Dragons, he has a fighter, but it's a fighter with only 2 hit points. And Brant has really, really fallen in love with his character, which you're not supposed to do in first edition because it's never going to end well. So he is the most cowardly fighter I've ever seen anybody play. Like he's always in the back. He's like the first person to run away. Which again, we've played some regular non-pushing dragons just sitting around the table 5e games, and that one, I guess there is that safety net, with your death saves and things like that. It is a lot harder to kill a character in fifth edition. um so yeah, so there's this aspect of not taking it seriously because you know that it's almost impossible for your character to die, which is the opposite of first edition. That first time Nate got killed, everybody around the table was like, "Oh crap, you can die in this game." I'm like, "Oh yeah."
I
We've
think it
had
was
a, we've
all.
had a couple of deaths.
I think it was the same day too that going back to the brand story with his fighter. It's like, he made the character first day, and then the second day he comes in with this sheet of printer paper, and it's his character like digitally drawn and like at like a professional level, and he's like, I drew this a while back. I'm like,
Oh
your
my
character's probably
goodness.
gonna die here in a few episodes, but it was just really funny.
Yeah. There's the crazy thing, right? Like, because we're talking about death in Dungeons and Dragons. I have yet, and my players can attest to this. I have yet not killed at least one player in a campaign. At least one. I don't know how it happens. Like everybody tells me, like you do everything right, all the rules are correct, like everything makes sense. Like, but it's just one character usually dies at least at one per campaign.
My Pushing Dragons character died during session one. So my character Ash Shadow was developed during the Pushing Dragons workshop, which I hope we do that again next summer. It was a really good opportunity. Day one was teaching people how to play D&D. Day two was teaching people how to play improv, and then day three and four was like bringing the page to the stage. And it was a really good, almost like an audition to be in Pushing Dragons. But the first day where we're learning how to play D&D, I was really confident, level one rogue, and then my character got one-shotted by a bugbear. And my character, I developed her because, my name is Kat. Anytime I get a suggestion, improv is always a cat. So in D&D, I'm going to play a tabaxi. So I played, which is a cat-like humanoid
Mm.
character. And yeah, bringing that character to the stage was really fun because it was really like a love letter to the cat owners in the room because, whenever we were camping, I would do zoomies. Every time I killed somebody, I made biscuits on my enemies. So it was really, I didn't want that character to be sexy. I know that Sean and Brad kind of wanted me to take inspiration from Eartha Kitt. Catwoman version, but I wanted her to be more silly than sexy, which is
More
why
actual cat, like
more actual cat person. And even like Nate, when I was playing with him, I wasn't going to answer his question until he filled my bowl,
yeah,
because that's what a cat would do. So,
right. Like I'm not gonna deal with you until you give me what I want. Like
yeah.
go away.
But that's how I got Warlock, is because I died in the first session. So then the DM like had me make a Warlock pack, and then when I got my level 2, it was a level Warlock, which was really cool, really fun.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say though. Fifth edition does do that well. Is that death doesn't always have to be permanent. It can tell a different story, but it doesn't have to be permanent. And I think it was neat because you were even, and I don't know how much is real about that portion of the previews that happened before the show that night. But like to see Kazarian potentially coming back would be interesting. But how he gets back is going to be the question. And
Yeah,
yeah,
we've talked. So in the our first campaign, we had one of the main. So the first campaign, we had three heroes who were pretty much the heroes from start to finish. Um, we had a scheduling conflict come up where one of the actresses, one of the actors playing one of the main characters, couldn't be in a couple of shows. So I was like, all right, well, let's take a break from the main characters and we'll get three new actors in to kind of be other heroes. So it was like this cool moment where all these heroes, it was kind of like Endgame, where all these heroes came together to fight the big bad in the end of our first campaign. But Kazarian, who was there from day one, ended up dying. And that was the first kind of player death we had, and like the audience was like really emotional about it. They really kind of played it up. And then second campaign rolls around, and we're having deaths left and right. And
The
so
first
I'm with
episode had a death, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Shitty
The
Pete?
first ever.
shitty.
No,
Yeah.
not that.
First
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. No, I'm
um,
saying like just the kickoff of like meeting all the new PCs.
Yep.
I think that September show, Zach's character died.
hmm
Oh yeah.
So I obviously I'm a dungeon master, and you're trying to make a good game and everything. I'm also a theater owner who is relying on ticket sales to keep the doors open. So you want the show to be good D&D, two, entertaining for an audience, some of whom may not be D&D super fans. So I'm always trying to like try out different pairings of actors to find like which is a really good chemistry. And so the first couple of shows, I was mixing it up with various player characters, and I was like, I think I found the sweet spot. Uh, it was Nate's character Sven, this girl Emmy, who had a character named Valana, and James Roach, who played Jerry the Wizard in our first campaign, had came up with this druid slash ranger named Shitty Pete, and for some reason they worked really really well together. Their chemistry
It's
was
weird.
off the charts. And then Shitty Pete gets killed. I'm like, damn it.
You call
And
him
then-
Shitty Pete for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And it's done.
And then
The
the
next
next
episode.
Valana gets killed. And I'm like, well, this kind of blows my entire idea to hell. Like, so Cassie became one of the main heroes, and Mark Lasavio, who played the Bard, Steve the Bard, they weren't even on my radar when we had first started. I mean, they were okay characters, but I was like, not really the characters I wanted to focus on. But somehow they became like the three main characters because nobody else could stay alive.
And it worked really, really well.
It really
did. And I think what the opportunity came from is at least for that perspective is that everything kind of focused in on Nate's character then, because he was the one that left. He was the one that was left.
Yeah, he had the survivor's guilt.
He had the survivor skill, and the other two characters kind of were this conglomerate to help him at first, and then they all, of course, took their own version, their own pathway as well. Um,
I would also, so I would like to ask, I mean, this is very and this entire episode has been very self-indulgent talking about my show. But so I would say that the first campaign was extremely railroady. Like, I would tell the players before the shows, like, you're going to start off here, you're going to be given a quest, it's going to take you here, and this is going to be your objective. So they really didn't have much say. They were just kind of reacting to whatever I threw at them. This second time around, I would go to the players. I started going to the players in between shows. I'm like, all right, this is where your characters left off. What would you like to do? These are the forces that have been starting to act around you. How would you like to handle that? And even Kat's character, Ash Shadow, she, would pop in and out of various episodes. And I think especially towards the end, I started asking you, because the entire campaign was focused on these group of mercenaries, the Emerald Worm. And as it's starting to go on, they're finding out that their leader isn't all that says he is. So I asked all the player characters, which side are you coming down on? You've been this mercenary and it's made you rich and, you've gotten some fame and fortune, but now you're finding out that, your leader may not be the nice guy you thought he is. Is that going to change, how you feel? And some characters, we did have a couple characters like, no, I'm Emerald Worm through and through. And then others are like, no, I think I'm going to join the rebellion, as you would. But I left all that up to the players, where I think first season I would have dictated, all right, your character is going to stay a bad guy, your character is going to be a double agent. But this one, I let the players decide, which made my job way harder, because it's harder to plan a story arc when you don't know what the characters are thinking or what they're going to do.
So as a players, how did you feel that worked out? Better, worse?
Well, there was a unique opportunity for Sean. Like, my character decision was that I was going to follow whatever my patron said. And my patron was never written in stone. So he could have made my patron Lord Viridian. And then I totally would have sided with Lord Viridian. And I totally gave him that option. I was like, my character is going to do this creature fiend saved me, and that's my master, and he feeds me, so I'm gonna do whatever he says. So if Sean, as a DM on top of the concession stand, would have said, this is, you recognize this as your patron, then I totally would have gone for Freya and Sven 100%.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I actually remember the night too that it happened, where Sean asked us the question, "What would you like to do?" And I was laying in my bed, and I don't look at me like that, James. Don't look at me like that. It was like a few weeks leading up to the next show, and like Sean said, he was kind of, what I did like about this season is that even like, despite the what would you like to do, it was the before the show, it was very much like very just like, you're gonna start on stage, you're starting out here, something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. And it was very ambiguous. So the only thing that I worried about was kind of like my entrances and exits of like, all right, where are we going, where are we entering, where are we exiting, which I thought allowed for me as the actor to do less thinking about like where I need to end up, and kind of just play a little bit more as the character, and not have to worry about all the other stuff. But when he asked the question that night of like, what would the party like to do? I remember just like laying in my bed, and I was like, I have no clue. Like, I don't know what to do. And we spent probably a good solid week. Me, Cassie, who played Freya, Mark, who played Steve, and at that point, Melendez, he was playing Pancho at that point in time before he passed away.
Oh
Not
no.
Melendez, the character, but Pancho died. I just want to make that clear. Pancho, the character, died.
It's my GM.
But I know, I know, right? But it was like, and I remember it got to a point that Sean was like, if you guys don't make up your mind, I'm just gonna create something. Because we had literally taken like the entire week leading up to the show, like trying to figure it out. But we ended up coming up with something, and
You did what every good party does. You split the
we
party.
split the party. Yes,
No.
yes. Well, I was
Oh,
it was also one of those things too where I'm thinking as a performer and as, I've directed stuff in the past and I have a theater background. I was also thinking like, all right, well, if we, go this route, it may be fun for tabletop, but is it going to be fun for stage? Is the audience going to like that? And I thought and I forgot who brought it up, but I thought that splitting the party was going to be a fun thing for the audience to see, and one of those things of like D&D players are like, no, don't split the party. So I think that's kind of how we got to that consensus.
yeah. I
Mhm.
looked at Sean after you said that, after that happened, and I went, Sean, so you're sending the two dumbest characters to go talk to a mind flayer? I was like,
That was
Two
they
barbarians.
decided. They decided how this party was split. They decided out what each half was going to do, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah, my brain's going, we're sending the two barbarians to go deal with the character who literally is nothing but interested in secrets and in knowledge, and this is not going to be
I
good.
don't, James, I don't know if this helps my case, but when coming up with it, I figured I was the only one who met the mind flare. So versus two strangers going in and asking, did we still send two barbarians to a mind flare? Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
Um,
Did you
so
actually succeed? Yes, you did.
yes, we did. I mean, yeah, we did succeed, not in combat, but in what we were looking for.
Yeah. And let's talk about that because I still feel bad for Christina that she walked out on set for like maybe 30 seconds
And
fully
that
dressed
makeup.
as a mind flayer just so she could take it all off.
So
Yeah, I would
I
say
helped her with her makeup before the show. So she is sitting in that costume makeup for 2.5 hours because I helped paint her green. And yeah, and she's just sitting in the Julia room waiting for her 30 seconds at the end of every
There's
episode.
30 seconds of an episode at the end. I was like, I felt so bad for her. Uh,
yeah, I get
um,
because I mean she's playing like a sexy mind player
yeah,
because so she's
so
got like
full
this
blown corset on
yeah the
and
corset on and she goes all out. I think she wised up in the later episodes, so she got like
the
long
green
green gloves
the
as
green
opposed to
gloves, yeah.
painting her arms green and her face and neck and everything. But yeah, now I will say that is the kind of the cool thing about our show is, um, like Kat said, I mean we're kind of community theater on a budget, but we do have some really really creative people um, helping us.
The dragon alone was mind blowing.
Yes,
Oh, but
um, the dragon, the video that is coming out on Saturday on our YouTube channel. The episode, it's the episode where we meet Sven's character for the very first time, but we had a gibbering mouther on
So
stage.
cool.
That was it was probably 9-10 feet tall.
yeah.
I mean it was gigantic. You had like four people inside it operating the mouths and the arms. Again,
When you
I'm
say big bad monster, they go big bad. Like
Yes.
it takes up the entire stage 90% of the time.
We even like rigged up the stage so that there was a curtain so that it was hidden and then it was a big reveal for the audience to
Yep.
see. And that was, as a fan of Pushing Dragons, that was really cool to
Yeah.
see the audience enjoy it.
So you had, and I mean, just off the top of my head, the ones I can remember alone is the Gibbering Mouther, the full size Mimic, which was great, the Gelatinous Cube, and then the Dragon. Those are the five or four big ones that I can remember. Now they also have, kobold masks laying around that are great for just random monsters that need to up here and attack things. But to put the amount of time that they put into it was pretty incredible.
Which I'm a moron when it comes to anything craft wise. The one time uh, I helped build a monster, I made willow wisps. So I got some like what do you call it, like dodgeballs
Yep.
that I was gonna spray paint yellow and glitter and stuff.
And just have somebody hold
But
it. And
yeah, they were gonna dress all in black and kind of like wave it around. And I thought like the glitter paint would like show up in the lights and whatnot. But I bought the wrong type of paint, and I also didn't even start it until like an hour and a half before the show. So there's these will wisps that are just have a very very light coat of yellow paint. You can see the red from the dodgeball bleeding through.
Classic.
The glitter, all the glitter would really do is just got all over the actor's hand. You really couldn't see. It didn't make any effect whatsoever, other than the actors had glitter hands for like the next 2 weeks. So that was like my one and only time contributing to building a monster. After that, I'm like, there are people much better. That's the sign of a good leader when he knows
you know what
to,
you can do, and you set it off to somebody else.
yes, exactly. I can recognize my weaknesses and am able to delegate that to people way more equipped than I am.
Yeah. So real quick, who do we need to give the shout out to for the show that did the dragon, that did the Gibbering Mouther, that was the creative behind that? Because they really do need to be shouted out for what the amount of work they put into it.
We've been for our first campaign, we had Sassafras, Danny Baker, who unfortunately she moved with her husband over to the West Coast, but she was instrumental in the Mimic and the Mind Flayer. I'm sorry, not the Mind Flayer, the Mimic and the Gibbering Mouther, the witches that we had as our big bad for our campaign, the finale of our first season. She made really detailed masks for our head witch, the Night Mother. And then second season, a bunch of different people. George Nelson made the Gelatinous Cube. Derek Munn and Cat Danger. Derek is our normally our tech person, but I went to him about a year ago and said, hey, if you were going to make a dragon, how would you do it? He's like, I think I can do it. So he spent like a good year figuring out how to make that happen. And then he and his girlfriend, Cat Danger, put that together. We've had some other really kind of cool, just like cool costumes. Like Cat, for your show, you had, what were they? The veggie.
The Vegemites? The Veggie Pygmies?
Yeah, the Veggie Pygmies.
Yes, that was the panties takeover, and we just gave the girls like a little picture of what a little pygmy looks like, but we want you to be cute, and then they really just went thrifting and found what they could, and they did their makeup, and they had a really really fun time with that. And then we had a man-eating plant where we just sewed pillows up that look like leaves together, and then she opened it, and then the plant like opened up, and it was really cool. We were sewing it like that day, trying to figure it out, and we were a team. We were a team. It was a good thing that we had to rehearse together 5 days a week, because part of that was going towards making these costumes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would say it's a very kind of DIY Little Rascals type feel to it. And again, because of my ADD, I start, getting to the show later and later and later. So sometimes like people only have, a day or two to try to gather up a costume. If I have a big monster in mind, I will try to tap people in advance. But we've had Knowles recently that I think I told people of like literally the night before is like, hey, you're gonna have to come up with a Knoll costume.
Which my best friend was one of the Knowles, and she has curly hair, so she just brushed her hair, and then bam, hyena. So
Bam,
Yeah.
hyena.
that's how it worked.
let's caveat that to the next question, right? So, for somebody who has extreme amounts of ADD, slowly wants to do things like closer and closer to the time frame. How much time did we have? Like when you mentioned to me, you're like, "Hey, I've got this idea for Dragon Fair." It was like 4 or 5 months ago, and then the next time I hear about it is a month beforehand, and they're like, "Hey, we have a meeting coming up in a month. Let's figure this shit out." And I was like, "Excuse me."
Yes, so the Dragon Fair was it was a day long tabletop role playing festival that we just had this past Saturday. It was a huge success. We got numbers from the Neon District, the Arts District. The head of the Arts District came and checked it out, and she thinks that we had over 1,000 people come through on Saturday, which was really, really cool. But so Brad and I would say we're dreamers. We're dreamers and we're drinkers. So normally what happens is
Add those together.
after a show, he and I, once the theater is shut down and everybody leaves, he and I will normally stay for an hour or two just talking about things we would like to do. And 99% of the time, those things we talk about just kind of float away into the ether, never to be seen or heard of again. But for some reason, and again, this is probably going on 2 years that he and I have been talking about this Dragon Fair or just this festival, like what it would look like, what things would we like to see. So, like I said, he and I have been mulling it over for a good 2 years, and then we're like, well, let's do it in the spring, and we had kind of picked a date in the spring, and then we really wanted people to come dressed up, and unfortunately in Virginia, especially our area, you go from winter immediately into summer. There is really no spring. You maybe have like 2 days of spring, so it immediately just got way too hot for people to be dolled up in outfits. Like we had somebody come as a Dragonborn this past weekend, and she had made this elaborate head piece and leather costume. Yes, it was magnificent. But if we had done that in the spring or the summer, she would have been dead from heat stroke. So that's why we finally had decided let's do it in November because it'd be cool enough that people could dress up and be comfortable. But the problem is that on top of having a full-time job at the TV station, I also have a theater that I am running that we program, about, I would say 20 to 25 shows a month. I'm in a good 6 or 7 of those shows. Plus I do the payroll, I do the marketing, I do all the bookkeeping.
You teach classes.
I teach classes. I, handle the beer orders, stuff like that. So,
You're
um,
a dad.
I'm a dad. Yeah. I, um, I'm a husband, although, that's the one that falls further and further down the ladder. But I'm a nerd who watches movies and reads comic books and still wants to play D&D sitting around at a table. So, um, ideally, I would love to be super organized and we had everything planned out months in advance. Um, but that didn't happen. So it was very much. I mean, I would say we're meeting for what, about a month and a half. I would say maybe a month.
Mm, I think
Um,
we had our first meeting a month and a half, and then it was like every week after that. But like some of them would be there, some of them would be on Zoom. It might not even have been a month and a half. Like there's something that tells me that we had like maybe a month.
yes, and on top of that, during the month of October at the Push Comedy Theater, we do this thing called the 666 Project, which is we get six writers, six directors, and six actors to put on a horror themed uh, play that runs for 6 nights. It's an actual full on theatrical production with like sets and costumes and actors. A lot of what we do is you're doing it for the love, but 666 we actually pay everybody who's involved because it is a monumental production. So on our infinite wisdom, we're like, hey, let's do the Dragon Fair
Right
2 weeks
after.
after our biggest show of the year that takes up all our energy and resources. So yeah, so we're always pulled in a million directions, but October we're pulled in even more directions than normal. So um, despite that, there is something, this weird kind of anxiety fueled thrill that you get just in improv in general because you're making it up as you go along. And we do tend to carry that over into a lot of our business dealing, which is why Brad and I are horrible, horrible businessmen. But we know how to put together a show. We know how to show people a good time, which I think we really succeeded on this past Saturday.
I
Yeah.
want to say something that I think I sent you directly, and that is that you gave the opportunity for people that wanted to make a point in taking on ownership
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity. I think that is something that is commendable because of the fact that a lot of people, when they have these amazing big dreams, they want to kind of hold it to control. And this was exactly not that. This was, you have this idea, okay, this fits with the prediction that we're looking at, go. And that goes all the way down from the setup with Sydney and I in the background, kind of building out the schedule and figuring out how everything works for somebody who goes to like conventions every other month. It feels like nowadays. Um, that's kind of where we set up, and then watching Kat take over the kids area and Nate jump on the books and all these things starting to come together. And I will tell you personally, up until like the week of, I was like, this is gonna explode. And then it's like the last week of the show before the festival, and it was like, nope, this is all done, this is all done, this is all done, this is all done. And I was like, wow, this might actually work. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Um, and then once everything was released, it looked more like a well-oiled machine than I could have ever expected, and I think that is something to say. Um, Minus the fact you were going to keep us out in the cold at night, which I had to thoroughly put my foot down, and thank God Brad did the same thing.
I was very cold. Yes.
It was getting
Yeah, we
very
were going
cold
to have
towards the end
our our Pushing Dragons show out. So the fair was held in this large kind of park area across the street from the theater. They have a big stage that we were going to do it on. And again, because this goes back to us being horrible business people, we decided, hey, let's make this fair free to
Mm-hmm.
everyone. All the events were free, except if you wanted to play a game, it was like what I think what
It was
settled
$5.
$5.
It was $5 for a
$5,
play for a game.
which the dungeon masters get all that money. We had one workshop, a cosplay workshop, that cost $5, but Mariah, who ran that, bought a bunch of materials for people. We charged because we had never done this before. We only charged the vendors $15 to set up shop at the fair, which I think a third of them still haven't even paid yet. But so the show, the Pushing Dragons show was, and then the money we just had to shell out for insurance and permits and
Lights, sound, chairs.
yeah, light, sound, all that other stuff. The Pushing Dragon show, where like we have an opportunity to do it in front of 300 people as opposed to 100 people. That's what we were hoping for.
Right.
But yeah, when it started dipping into like, yeah, it was gonna be like 45 degrees out, that's when I'm like, all right, screw it, let's move it indoors.
Yeah. But once again, and I will say that's one thing about Pushing Dragon show is that every time I go, it's full. There is never there is never a day where I go there and I'm just like, where is everybody? The chairs are open. Like there's never chairs open. There's days where I get there late because I live on the other side of the stupid tunnel, and it's like, well, I guess I'm sneaking in the back because there's no seats, and I'm standing.
Yeah, we tried
for the
to
rest of the show.
roll a D20, and that's your price at the ticket. We tried to do that right at the start, but then people were not buying tickets ahead of time, and then it would sell out. So
Right.
we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Just a good problem to have.
It is an excellent problem to have. But sadly, I will say it's not something that like you can't reproduce Pushing Dragons. So, like you couldn't be like, "Yep, we're gonna show it on Wednesday, and we're gonna show the exact same show on Friday," because this is improv, so it doesn't work like that. So you have to be there for the show, and for somebody who tries not to miss a single show, it is my one time to go through the bridge, which I absolutely cannot stand. And to give, I would say to give respect for you, Sean, gritting my teeth every week to be there for meetings for the Dragon Fair a was a thing in itself, because you're like, nope, I need you there every Sunday to talk about this coming up. And for somebody who doesn't go over this bridge or go through the bridge, it's like every time I went through the tunnel, I grit my teeth. But
Oh, trust me, I live 10 minutes from the theater, and me being there every Sunday, I hated it so much. Sunday is like usually the one day off that I get. Now that I'm older, I don't do every single Saturday show. Back when the theater first opened, I was there every Saturday night. So now I have an occasional Saturday off. But Sundays were like always my day. Like I'm not doing any work on a Sunday.
Right.
So, and having to be there at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, it was murder. So
yeah,
I
know you would come without coffee, and I was completely just blown away. Like,
yeah.
who picks a meeting day and then doesn't bring coffee for the entire crew? I don't get it. Anyway, at this point, this is technically considered, we've moved into happy hour for the show, which means this is where the guests, anybody who's in the chat right now, if you have questions for Sean, Kat, or Nate, or myself even, happy to answer those questions as long as they don't go completely off the rails. Every once in a while, I have that person that sits in this room and they ask the questions that we don't need to talk about in here. I will say though, please keep it within the TTRPG community. We don't need to go through things like religion and politics here. That's for another time, another place. So, but yeah. And if you have any questions for me or for other people in the chat, you're welcome to ask those questions at this point too. So, since we have more people, then it's not just me and the other person. So,
While
we can
we're
sit here
waiting for the
quiet.
questions to roll in,
Sure.
I helped make the child-friendly activities for the area, and Nate gave me a really good plug of Salem at the Big Free Bookstore. They helped me connect with over a dozen volunteers throughout the day that helped do crafting activities and helped me perform the magical science experiments. And your friend Chet Menton donated coloring pages for the
Mhm.
kids, so I really wanted to shout him out. And the 757 Creative Reuse Center, they donated a lot of the supplies that the kids used, which was amazing. So a lot of the success that happened today wasn't just the volunteers at the Push Comedy Theater, but also volunteers in the community.
Yeah, no, the community definitely came together for this one. I think I was told 2,000 books were donated. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
Yep.
Like that alone.
for free. Yeah.
Um, Astounding average. Would you consider traveling with this show? Its costume prop intensity, unlike other improv formats. Ooh,
We have, yes. Idea. So we've traveled locally
we lost
to. Oh, it looks like Looks like
we
we
lost
lost
cat.
Cat.
So we're gonna be a little mixed matched for the moment.
Um, we've traveled to some local festivals. We've done MarsCon a couple times. We just did BirdQuest up in Williamsburg very recently. We've applied to a festival in Richmond. I like. Oh, there's my fearless leader, Brad. Um, we locally when we do a convention locally, we can bring all our people and some of our bigger props and set pieces and stuff. As much as I would love to do like PAX East or PAX Unplugged or even like Gen Con or something like that. If we do that, then we have to like really kind of strip down our cast, which I'm not a very, I'm not a big confrontation guy. So like,
Who do you bring?
yeah, assembling the entire crew of people is like, hey, we got into Gen Con. That's great news. Bad news is myself and five of you are the only ones that are going to be able to go. So, unless you want to pay your own way. But
I will tell you, from somebody who's going not only as a participant but as a vendor and things like that, not as much is given to you as people think. So most of us still bring money out of pocket, no matter what convention we go to. Smaller conventions usually have a better opportunity for those benefits, but for that time, because things like Gen Con and stuff, mostly you'll charge for your event in order. Hopefully, that will pay for some of your return on investment type thing. Sean and I have talked about this a few different times. I've gotten him in front of some names. Hopefully, we can move Pushing Dragons beyond Virginia one or two times in the near future, but that's all going to depend on the events and people and potentially the fundraising opportunity that we would have to have in order to get these people out here, get people out to those events, because they're not super cheap. Like, I'm not gonna lie, they can get pricey depending on the event itself. Gen Con is not a small picket, not a small amount of money, that's for sure. So
yeah, and I would say that another big obstacle that I've found is just in describing our show to people. Like I said, you can watch episodes on YouTube, but that never translates to the energy you feel in the audience. And you say you're a D&D live play, so people just assume you're sitting on stage around a table playing. And I know it's improv, and I have gone to see like some D&D improv where they don't really play. They just like, hey, let's get a one-word suggestion, elf, and then they do a bunch of scenes, in like the world of D&D using like some D&D terminology, but they're not playing. There's no story, there's no dice, there's nothing like that. There's no rules. So our biggest barrier is just describing our show, that it's a live play plus cosplay plus LARPing plus improv plus, you know, uh, if we need if the big bad needs a henchman, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to just randomly grab an audience member and throw them on stage to act out as, a henchman or something like that, because that's half the fun. So, yeah, it's just getting word out about the show and getting people to the theater to actually see it so they can kind of understand what it is we do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for those who are not local, we did post a message up there earlier. I'm going to post it again here. Um, if you're able to contribute in any way, shape, or form to the show, this is the link for that. So um, I know, as much as we say, like they said, they're a comedy theater on a budget, so any extra help does help. Warlock Simon says, any current plans for the teens in the D&D show?
Our teens got to have a live show at the Dragon
They did.
Fair. They did incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what just happened to my hair, but yeah. So we actually have our normal teen improv class actually starts this Saturday, which Kat is coming on board as one of the teachers, along with Cassie, who plays Freya, and Christina, who played the Mind Flayer. So we do now have 3 Pushing Dragons people involved. So yes, I would like to get the teens their own show, even if it's even quarterly or something.
Right.
Preferably a show that I don't have to do a lot. That I can like hand it over to other people to help get off the ground. Which that was the cool thing about Dragon Fair. We wanted a teen show, but I didn't have time to do it. So Chris Francis stepped up to be the dungeon master, and Christina Rose, our Mind Flayer, really helped in getting the teens together for that. But yeah, this is one of those things. Yes, I want it, but it's going to be somebody else taking the reins and stepping up,
right,
to make it happen.
And I think that's something that we're seeing more and more. There is that as people start picking up those spots and those helper roles, that takes some time and energy off of Sean, who is directing so much. Yeah, no, I would love to see it. I would probably come a second time a month to cross the bridge to take the kiddo, because he really enjoyed it. I will say his next question to me was, "Hey Dad, how do I get involved?" And I was like, "Hey, hold on."
There is a summer camp as well that they had a teen prov summer camp, and I know at least one summer we had a teen Pushing Dragons summer camp, where at the end of that there was a grad show as well.
Yeah. Well, if anybody wants to house my kid for like a month, that's the only way that's going to work for me, because I can't get over
Hey,
it.
I live on the other side of the water as well, and I'm at Push like almost 4 times a week, because I do.
That's crazy.
Other shows.
That's dedication right there. I'm not gonna lie. But I do want to. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming on the show tonight, because everybody has lives. Nate's sitting at the theater right now.
Yeah, Nate was in class up until 9:00, and then is sitting in our. Are you in the lobby or are you in the green room?
I'm in the lobby right now.
Oh, okay.
I had to put this beautiful tavern behind me, so
yeah, you did a lot of work just to set up for. I want to give Nate a shout out. Like I said, Kat did an awesome job at the Dragon Fair with the wizard section, where it was kind of like the wizardry of science. So there were all these kind of science experiments that the kids could interact with. Leah, who had the Feywild, also had like some really cool kids activities.
Yeah.
Cassie, who helped with the barbarian section, she did like the trivia and
the yoga.
the Barbarian Yoga. Nate got the crappy job of being stuck behind the tech board for
Not just one tech board. Both of
both
the
tech
tech
boards.
boards.
Because we had two stages going on. We had stuff going on inside the Push Comedy Theater and then on the main stage outside. So yeah, Nate was running back and forth between the two of those. And again, like I said, it is a thankless job, but it does not go unnoticed. So Nate, in front of the tens of thousands of people who are watching right now, I want to say a big thank you for all your work on Saturday. It was really, really appreciated.
I did the best I could.
No,
I mean,
right.
I love
everybody.
Again,
I love pushing drag. I mean, I fell in love with the show. Is the first time I ever saw it, and I saw the environment and how electric. Because that's one thing about that I love about this show is that it's like our own sort of secret club where like all like 90 to 100 people like even like are just connected and we all love the one thing. And I even remember like the last episode, nothing, there was no battle, there was no fight, there was just a bunch of kind of like our final farewells before we died, or we were going to die pretty much because it wasn't looking good for us. But it was like kind of like our final goodbyes. And I remember like at intermission, just like everybody, like the energy and everything was just so electric. And that's what I just fell in love with. And I thought Dragon Fair did a great job of that too, of like, everybody was in costume. And that's something also I wanted to mention too. I mean, we didn't have the big extravagant $1 million props, but it was still like fun because we were taking that suspension of disbelief that we have on stage and throwing it out in the plot, and it's like this is fun, this works. So
Yeah, and I will tell you from sitting at the commune most of the day, watching the amount of people in costume coming in and sitting down and eating and coming over and looking at the amazing table that Mike brought out, and then coming in and gaming. And if it wasn't for the fact that I didn't have a way to save people's tickets and then be able to give them back their money if we didn't fill the table or reach out to them if we could get extra players, there were multiple opportunities for open tables to continue to be built throughout that. Every table was sold out that day. What that means though going forward is that means we can produce more tables, we can produce more stuff next year. If there is, which I'm hoping we do Dragon Fair 2.0 next year, which is going to be bigger and crazier. So maybe we'll get the shark this year. Who knows?
Shark.
If we can talk Brad. Brad is the advocate for the shark, so. But no.
Yeah, I don't know where this rumor started that there was going to be a shark, a live
It
shark.
was the first thing in the Google Doc. The first line said live shark. And I
don't know if this is true, but I want to blame Mark. Our resident Steve is a marine biologist. So, I feel like he's been really hammering down on that. I don't know if this is factual, but I blame him for it.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, we'll blame Steve.
Somehow the city got wind of this rumor that we were going to have a live shark, because a woman in the planning department asked me, "Is like, so what's the deal with this shark? How is this like?" And I was trying to explain to her, it's like there is no shark. I'm not quite sure how this rumor got out.
We're just gonna dress. We're gonna dress Nate up like just as a great white shark next year and just have him wander around.
But why would there be a shark at a Dungeons and Dragons festival? I don't
either.
A kraken, maybe. Who knows?
I think, Sean, if you want to get to the bottom of it, I think when you first put out, like the very first thing that you put out for Dragon Fair, you put out a wish list.
Mm-hmm.
And Dragon Fair wishes, and the first thing, I bet it was Mark being a smart ass, but he was like a shark, a live shark, and
right.
It just.
But how did the city find out about that? Because that was document just for us. Wish was like, we will at the fair. So Again, I'm not quite sure how this happened, but
Oh my,
We
the
have
shark has become legendary.
it was funny. One of the students here is learning tech with me, and a couple weeks before Dragon Fair, he kind of turns to me. He's like, because he works for the city, so he knows a lot of the stuff that's going on with the city and like events. And he was like, "So how is Push gonna do a live shark?" And I was like, "This, it's not happening. Like it's not
Not
real,
yet.
Yep,
not
not
real.
yet.
We'll find a way.
We have a
We'll
mole.
find
We
a
have a
way."
mole somewhere in Push Comedy that is connected to the city, and apparently it's a student. Uh,
We'll figure it out.
anyway, I hate to be that person, but we are 5 minutes till the show ends tonight. It has been such a wonder to just sit here and talk about the passion that not only you guys have as Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPGs, but for improv, which I think moving forward in the way that the community has grown in this with things like live plays and things like Critical Role, improv and role playing has become kind of the forefront of things. Just flipping through the new 2024 rule books, a lot of it is built more on outside combat scenarios, and I think that's going to do a different. That's going to shift the dynamic of how Dungeons and Dragons will be played going forward. So, as somebody who has never done any sort of professional improvisation or been trained in any way, shape, or form, what is a final tip you can give the audience here that would help them improve their improvisation at the table? Sean, since you're the old man of the night, you go first.
Okay. I'm going to go back to this is the golden rule of improv, and everybody thinks it's yes and, but it's make your partner look good when you are sitting around the table. If your goal, whether you're a player or a dungeon master, if your goal is to make your other players look good, and their job is the same, but their job is to make you look good. Yes, there will be certain nights where your character is, the one that the spotlight is focused on for this particular session. But it's the people who come into a game thinking I'm the main character and you guys are all my supporting characters. That's when that campaign or that table will just fall apart. When you're always like looking, how can I make this character, my friend's character, better? How can I, this person, you can tell they're not really great at, role playing. It makes them uncomfortable. What can I do to help them ease that anxiety? What can I do to make the dungeon master's job just a little bit easier? If you go into every session thinking, how can I make the lives of my fellow players a little bit easier, or the dungeon master life a little bit better, you're going to have a good time.
Awesome. Kat?
As someone who's riddled with anxiety, I do not have an acting background, so my biggest piece of advice is to do it afraid. Especially when it comes to playing a character, you gotta speak up for your character, especially if you're in a really big party and you want to stand up for yourself, and whatever you want, you really have to go for it and do it afraid. And that's really helped me with improv, and it helped me with D&D too, because I had trouble connecting with my character, and it's really just because I was scared to be someone else. Even though I did improv, but when you do improv, you're only someone else for 2 minutes. But when you're doing D&D, I'm in this campaign going on like a year and a half now. So it's really making those decisions and doing it afraid, and really trusting yourself is very helpful.
Awesome. And Nate?
Sean already mentioned it, but I'm going to say it. Yes, and is a big part of tabletop, in my opinion. The rule of improv, where you're accepting what's being said and then adding on to it. There's been a bunch of times I've been at tables where we've spent like 20, 30 minutes arguing about how much gold we're going to do or what plan we're going to do. Is like, no, we're going to do this, no, we're going to do that. And there's also been times as well where, sometimes people at our table aren't clicking because you have that negative Nancy at the table who is just like killing everything all the time. So I think the best thing for tabletop is just for everybody to just yes and one another. And I feel like you'd have a lot more fun doing that than arguing for 40 minutes.
Well, for those who've been watching the entire show, this is the end of it, and this is where you get uh, the biggest help, and that is the tip of the day. Each one of them have great tips. Make sure that you're making the other players feel comfortable and look good. Um, Step out of your comfort zone a little bit and do things that you might not be fully comfortable with. And then, of course, kind of roll with the punches a bit more than you, instead of trying to fight everything that's happening at the table. You'd be surprised at what kind of stories come from the ability to allow the next person to make a little bit more of your decision and vice versa.
Can I interject real fast?
Go for it.
Did you just make this audience sit through an hour and a half of our bullshit for 3 lousy improv tips?
Absolutely, 100%.
I'd ask for my money back if I was the audience.
Well, if they were paying me, then I would. But no, thank you all for coming back on the show. Sean coming back, the other two coming for the first time. I think we're going to see a little bit more of Push coming in 2025, but we'll find out that soon. Until then, everybody raise your glasses high. This is Last Call. This is Tavern Talks. I hope you had a wonderful time with everybody here at Push Comedy Theater and myself. And we'll see you guys all next week for our next episode of Tavern Talks. Don't forget, tomorrow night we have Beaker Builds with my buddy Beaker, where he's starting his model for Zeong, the Gundam or Gunpla, and then come back over to Gen Con TV on Mondays to continue our story in Icewind Dale. Until then, have a wonderful evening and raise your glasses high. Good night.
Good night.